And there we go. At least this way we have a record of the recording.
Sure.
Um, I'm expecting a few more people, but whenever they show up or if they show up, we'll see what happens. In any event, wanted to spend a little bit of time, see how you and your brother are doing since we met in Atlantic City.
Yeah. Um, we just printed some pretty cool artwork. Sorry, give me one sec. I lost my Zoom. There we are. It was just a four color print, but we did it all single stroked, like soft hand feel. And what one of the challenges that I was thinking about when we were doing it was, like a 17-inch by 13-inch wide piece of artwork.
Mm,
And so I didn't know if I should add a little bit of spread on some of the colors that would get trapped under the top kind of black. And what I realized in hindsight is I probably shouldn't have done that because with only single stroking each of the colors before that top trap color went down, where the colors overlap, the plastisol and that thicker texture that it made where it, got double hit by one to two different colors, it kind of gets that shiny texture and you can kind of even on a half point spread that I added,
right.
uh, it was visible. You could see a texture difference because of that the plastisol being thicker and it had a sheen to it.
Oh, well, sometimes you have to do some experimenting just to see what does and doesn't work. So that's all right.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
definitely a learning point.
I mean, the biggest thing is, learning from your mistakes or uh, making adjustments based on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I assume you guys are now on a 3-point registration system, and um,
Yeah, so this is kind of what we're doing now. This is a film I just printed out.
all
Uh,
right,
so yeah, we got our 3 points. We got the big squares. We got the step wedge, and
great,
that's definitely been helpful for us. Our screen making has been great, and the registration tape is a massive time saver.
good,
Hey, Charlie.
as it should be. Well, there are certain things that you don't know how good they are until you try them, or you don't realize how much time you've been wasting until you find something that actually does do the job for you. So, and I think the registration tape was one of the best things that anybody's ever come up with. I mean, we used to do it with 3-inch clear tape, and not that that didn't work, but it just took that much more time. Uh, the adhesive was so strong that it would move the garment when you were trying to peel it, so you couldn't really use that garment again. Where with the registration tape, it holds it in place. It's one big smooth area, which is easy to deal with. And then if you do carefully remove it, you can just do your initial print on it to see how everything comes together.
Yeah, it was really nice. It saves so much time. And like we don't have to worry about going through test shirt after test shirt if you make a mistake.
Yeah, no, one shirt and you're done.
The big
So
lifesaver.
So I assume you guys have made a little bit of use of the ink that you got, if nothing else. Um, have you tried out the PMI gel on your automatic or not?
so we did two things that we replaced one of our print grips that had come off with a PMI gel pad, and the difference in height between the two different gel
Yeah,
pads was just a conflict. So we were just gonna wait until we needed to take all of them off.
yeah.
Um, and then the other thing is the sizing was just slightly smaller, so we needed to kind of, hack two of them together, which is fine. And then I think we might have been having issues with did we put tape? We put tape underneath it and it was lifting off of the tape.
Yeah,
Uh,
you need to tape all the way around the edges so that you
yeah.
don't catch a corner and have it move on you.
For some reason it was like lifting in like the center. I don't know why. We
Huh.
followed the same procedure we usually do, so it was kind of strange. And we just kind of put it on the side and we're going to deal with it at a later time. But
Yeah. Listen, you can't throw everything into the burner at once, so that's all right. So I'm assuming I've got two guys who are supposed to show up. One is Richard Greaves, who's another industry consultant, and then one of my other clients, Jim. Um, since they're not here, we'll go on without them anyway, which doesn't really matter. So I was looking at your business card, and for every item plants 30 oysters back into our bays. So what made you guys decide to get on board with oysters?
It's a great
Just
question.
curious. Huh?
Alex, do you want to take it?
Yeah, yeah. So oysters are they're natural filter feeders in our oceans. One oyster is capable of filtering up to 50 gallons of water a day. Um, so back in the early 1900s, before we decimated the populations of oysters from commercial fishing, or not fishing, but gathering of the oysters,
Sure.
um, there were large oyster reefs where people used to crash boats into the oyster reef. So they were a huge source of um, water filtration for our local waters. Um, we had seen the quality of our bay waters decline over time, even just in the 20, 30 years that we've been around. So we wanted to find ways to combat that. And there was a local organization called the Merchants Bay Project, who is doing just that, reseeding oysters back into our bays. So we decided to partner with them because we love their mission. And that's kind of how we started with the oyster mission.
So you guys don't eat oysters.
We
I
do.
love eating oysters,
Okay, I was going to say, if
actually.
you don't eat oysters, man, send them to me because I love eating them. But I just think that it's a pretty interesting project. And I really have to admit, I didn't know much about oysters in terms of filtration or anything. Uh, Definitely was not the thing that I studied. The only thing I studied about oysters is which size I like, which type. And, naked cowboys, they can send those to me all day long. But nevertheless, uh, oh, I think it's a great project. I think, so for every shirt that you guys sell, you donate, in essence, enough for 30 oysters to be put back into the water.
Yep, we donate proceeds and we also help by volunteering every week to clean the oysters. There's a dock that we raise them on about 5 minutes from our shop. And essentially, throughout the summer, we got to go down there, haul these big barrels out from underneath, clean them, make sure that everything looks good, put them back. They sort of sit on this trunk line. It's called a flupsy, which is a floating upweller system. And the oysters are in high density in these barrels that have mesh on the bottom. And of course, over time, like anything sitting in the water, there's a lot of fouling and marine growth that happens on the bottom of that mesh. So we got to clean that mesh every single week. And the motor at the end of the trunk line basically super feeds the oysters through that mesh on the bottom of the barrel. And in about one season, we can go from oysters like the size of your pinky nail to about an inch and a half in like less than 6 months. So they don't really have the cup or like depth that they need to like really eat them for consumption, but they're at a size that ensures enough of a survival rate when we return them back for restoration.
How long does it, I know this is off the subject, but how long does it take for an oyster from the size of your pinky nail to grow to a size that's considered consumable?
I think it's two years to 3 years,
Okay,
depending on the seasons. I think it's at least 2 years usually though to get that nice round bottom and have
okay.
enough depth.
So the bay that you guys deal with is which bay?
We work in Moriches Bay.
Okay. When I lived in New York, we would go out to Noyak Bay periodically. We had
Beautiful.
friends who had a house out there, and so um, which was pretty nice. And I remember one of the guys going in the water, pulling out a scallop and popping the shell and eating the raw scallop at that time, which I guess was really unheard of back in my day. That we're going back to the '60s, uh, or actually early '70s. But nevertheless, uh, times have changed. Of course, now everybody eats anything that moves, whether it's in the water or not. So that takes care of that. I think it's a great project. I think it's something that is pretty cool. So I assume when you guys do your shirts, and obviously based on your name, you also have some kind of a flyer or whatever that comes along with the shirt that describes what you guys are doing.
Yeah, we have the information on the business card, and we usually, to avoid extra packaging, we've been rolling our shirts and then tying the business card around them. And then
Yeah.
we also, yeah, you can't see it, but we screen print the mission onto the neck label as well. And that's honestly the relabeling. It takes just as much time as doing the damn prints, but
One of the things you guys should consider down the road is picking up a pad printer.
so we
So
got it in cups. We
yes,
And because we when we went over to MV Sport, they were nice enough to show us some pad printing and talk to us a little bit about their relabeling process. And I got the pad printer, and I didn't really realize at the time the sort of solvents that were involved, and I don't know, we just didn't really like get into the groove with it. I have a laser cutter that one of the challenges was that I think the spot size of the laser that you need to develop or to etch away the plates is very small. So you need a more high-end laser machine. Now that said, I was able to etch a few and it came out fine. But I think where I fell down was on the right concentration of solvent in with the ink so that you get just enough solidification on the surface to stick to the silicon pad, but not too much that it dries out or too little. So I just didn't really dial in the chemistry enough, I think, to figure it out.
I may be able to help you out with that. My partner's brother, my original partner back in the 60s or 70s, his brother ran a shop in New Jersey where they must have had a dozen pad printers running just to do the interior of shirts. And Michael got very, very efficient with it. They were using ink cups, which is pretty much what everybody does.
Mm.
And I've got another friend who actually worked for ink cups and sold that product. So
Oh, wow.
I can certainly get you a little bit of information on what kind of ratios you have to deal with.
Yeah,
Personally, I don't know beans about it.
yeah, I think it's something that we should definitely explore again. And we have the machine sitting there and we just haven't. And
Yeah, I
especially we
mean,
got our ventilation better now too, because that was one of the problems when I first was working on it. I was like spent a few hours playing with it and I had a headache at the end of the day and was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna screen print these for now because I'm not dealing with this headache. But now we have an exhaust fan like that we could put the thing right next to that would just kind of, I think, help with some of those fumes and yeah.
yeah, I'll check with that friend of mine, Billy. But basically, I mean, you should be able to print through so much faster than on the screen print for what you're doing for the interior of the shirt. I mean, I watched women doing. If it took them uh, more than a minute to a minute and a half to do a dozen shirts, they must have been too slow. I mean,
Yeah.
they just boom, 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 as fast as they could go. They would just stack it on their lap and just boom, 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 get a dozen, drop the side, grab another dozen, do it again. And of course, in your case, um, because you're going to just deal with size shifts, I assume, um, for you to have more permanent plates, the metal plates made, would make a lot of sense just because they're supposed to be good for 1 million impressions versus a polymer plate, which is considerably um, less um, flexible, I guess.
Mm.
Or I mean, they're flexible, but they just don't have the longevity.
Yeah, I think I was looking into the plate making and I wanted the ability to like do it on our, our little desktop laser. So that was part of the problem was just kind of figuring that out because depending on how big that area is that you're going to actually flood with the ink cup, you have to have a certain amount of like essentially like half toning that goes on with like different
Mhm.
dot sizing to
Yeah, you
support.
have to do two exposures, one for the type and one for the halftone that's going to sit over the whole thing.
Yeah, so it was very interesting. Like, kind of, I just started learning about it. I didn't really dial it in, but the appeal of not having to run those shirts through the dryer and being able to work that quickly, I was like, wow, okay, we're not wasting energy to run the dryer just for doing the relabeling, which
Right.
is, takes time. And
Yeah, it takes as long to do the interior of the shirt, if not longer than to do the exterior.
Yeah.
yeah, so prior, we should really jump into that as as like a sort of project that we should prioritize over here and trying to figure that out because it would definitely save us time.
Yeah, and I mean, you're never going to get white on the inside of a black shirt, but you will get a good gray that people can read, which is really all that counts. And so, really, for you guys, you're looking at two colors, pretty much white ink or black ink.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's either going to be light color or dark color, which is probably a really good situation to be in, as opposed to having to mess around with a bunch of colors.
Yeah, I think I have like the ink cups ink. I think it's like I forgot the PMS code, but it's like it's a standard gray for relabeling, and I don't even know. I don't even think I have any other colors. Just that one gray.
Well, you really wouldn't need any others. So
Yeah.
you guys did get a chance to go out to MV Sport again, or you have not?
Have not. I haven't connected with Manny. That's another thing that we absolutely need to do.
You do. As a matter of fact, my other guys who were at the show that were conducting some of the seminars, the guys from Axelrad,
Hmm.
were also heading out to see Manny's place. And just because he's got some things that he does that are pretty interesting and unique, uh, definitely don't fall in line with what everybody else does, but he makes it work in his shop. And that being the case, it's always interesting to see what somebody's doing and how they're doing it, and is it something that you can uh, basically take away some of the information and use it in your own shop.
Yeah, well, certainly interested in seeing how he glues down palettes so quickly.
Yeah, I mean, he does use a liquid adhesive on all his pallets, but he dilutes it to the point where they put it on after every shirt, so it does require two people on press. Uh, that being said, um, for him, that's not a hardship, uh, just because of the quantities that they're getting out. I mean, and his staff is pretty efficient. I mean, the women who are really good at knocking out like 1,000 shirts a day with 10, 12 setups, which is really pretty awesome, actually. Now, granted, not all of his stuff is very complex. He's doing mostly, one, two, three color work, but still changeover, et cetera, does take time. He's got it down pretty well. Of course, some of the other things he has won't do you any good. You don't need to see these massive Dane machines that do the reclaiming and stuff, because a little overkill for what you guys might ever need, or at least not for many years anyway.
Yeah.
So,
Hopefully one day.
yeah. So there's the two of you, and what was his name? John?
Yes.
Okay. So the three of you, and obviously he's not there full time.
He is now actually. Yeah. He's
Oh,
just
he is with you guys now full time?
yep. He's on some sales calls right now, actually.
He's doing what?
He's taking some calls with some clients right now.
Okay. Um, so the three of you work together. You have any other employees, or that's it?
Yeah, we have another partner, Casey. He does more of our sustainability stuff because we have this beach cleanup station program. I don't know if we ever talked about this, but we essentially set up these wooden docking stations at the beaches, and we
Okay.
provide beachgoers with access to shopping baskets so that they can take them on their beach walks and use it to help clean up trash and then return it when they're done. And we have about 110 of those. Most of them are on Long Island, and we have a few in California and a few in some other states as well. But it's a project we started about 5 years ago, and it's something that's kind of become part of our branding and what we do. So
So, so let's talk about your branding. So first of all, you came up with the name based on the whole oyster thing, or what?
yeah, I actually was going through old sketchbooks, and I found one sketch that had Relic kind of written on the corner of it. And I just saw it and was like, oh, this makes sense. I must have thought of this years ago. And it just seemed like appropriate to discover that in that way. So I kind of just went with that.
Okay. And so talk to me about your marketing. You're doing it predominantly online, but also going after clients on a more formal level or not?
Yeah, Alex, you want to give some insight there?
Yeah. Yeah. So on the brand side of things, we do a lot of marketing online on social media. Um, but when it comes to the private label screen printing business, we haven't really done any marketing. We've Jack's been doing a lot of cold calls, and we began some organic outreach from just people who know of us in the community, from what we do in the community, or who know of us from the brand.
Okay. Well, you guys are out in part of the island where certainly you're a bit isolated from the city in a sense, which is not a bad thing. So you have the access to a lot of the companies that are out in your area that probably aren't interested in dealing with somebody further towards Midtown.
Yeah, we're actually we're kind of strategically located right at the beginning of either fork of Long Island, and there's
Right.
not too many screen printers. There's a few on the forks themselves, so we kind of can be a good bridge between the forks, and you don't have to go any further west. So
Yeah, listen, screen printers
not
are like
bad.
dirt. They're everywhere. You're going to find them no matter where you go. But certainly, not having a heavy concentration is definitely a positive thing.
Yep.
Um, at that point, it doesn't take much for you to have your name out there where people understand who you are and what you're about. So you started Relic how many years ago now?
Uh, Back in 2016, so
Okay,
nine or
nine
like
years.
9 years. Yeah.
Okay, and I noticed um, you went to for your
I went to Penn State.
Penn State for your undergraduate work,
Yep.
and
Yeah,
and
I
you
studied
studied.
finance at Penn State and worked in wealth management for a year and then started printing t-shirts and building this brand with Aiden.
Yeah, corporate world is. I mean, I was in it for a little while as well, and that's why I got into t-shirts because thanks very much. The corporate world was not for me, or at least not the corporate world that I was in at that time. But Aiden, what was your background?
I did chemical engineering. I went to Brown for my undergraduate, and I did a 1-year master's program in kind of like commercializing engineering research. And then I worked for a valve company for a few months, and then I did programming, and I kind of got into software and electrical engineering, and now I am into screen printing t-shirts as well, which I was surprised at first. There's so much depth, and the process and the manufacturing process has a lot of room for engineering input that I didn't really think about, and I've come to really love it. Like I think it's just super fun to learn about, and I think we're every day there's a chance to optimize something better than there was the day before. So it kind of gets me going.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting field. You can do it as a very simple boom, boom, one color. Here it is. I can do a dozen of these and sell them on my own. Or you can get pretty serious about it and find out that there's a heck of a lot more involved in getting a T-shirt printed than just grabbing a screen and boom, boom, boom. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. Uh, Coming out of both your backgrounds is kind of interesting. The one client that I had that kind of had an interesting background, not that some didn't, but it's a company called Legacy Sportswear, um, which has grown massively. But back when I put in their screen print operation, I figured, oh, this is a little company, who knows? The owner of the company has a law degree. To this day, he's never practiced a minute of law. Uh, Kind of got started in t-shirts while he was still in college and took off on that. My biggest overall client was way back in the early 80s. Um, I helped the guy put together his shop, and David grew it and grew it and grew it. David is probably, I don't know, I guess at this point in his 50s, has been retired for I don't know how many years, has his home in Phoenix, has his home in down in Phuket, Thailand. Um, just bounces back and forth between them, doing whatever the hell he wants, I guess. But back when I helped him start out, I remember his first place was probably about, I don't know, 2,000 square feet, maybe, and that may actually be an exaggeration. I think it could be smaller than that. I know it was next to a pickle factory because I would come home with jugs of pickles, which I loved. Of course, you can't do that nowadays. They won't let you on the plane. But he took that there for a couple of years, went to a 5,000 square foot facility with 6 automatics. And not too many years after that, he asked me to help him design or redo his new plant, which was 93,000 square feet. He's one of those guys who definitely got very aggressive and was willing to just put it out there and definitely go for it. But it's always interesting because in this industry, you don't really think too much of where entrepreneurs come from. And of course, the bulk of this industry is definitely a blue collar industry. And the bulk of these shops are, quote unquote, owned by blue collar individuals. Not that that's a bad thing, but it's always interesting when you come out with a chemical degree or with a financial degree. Financial not being as curious, only because a fair amount of companies start out on that level, but they stay front office where you guys are in the back room, which is kind of a twist. Me, I was always, yeah, I mean, I my degrees are on the easier side. I have fine art degrees, so the only thing I did was I refused to do that stupid thing called silk screening. But I'm serious. But I was never a front office person. I was always in the back. Hated the front office. Books and I just didn't get along. But it's kind of interesting, both your backgrounds being far from what this industry is generally about. So notice I have a pretty good little shiner there, huh?
Yeah, what happened there?
So, so I had cataracts and had cataract surgery for my right eye. That was great. 2 weeks later, I had cataract surgery for my left eye. That was fine. That was on a Tuesday. That Sunday, I was flying up to M&R. M&R now wants me to get involved with their DTF system and wants me to work with them on working with prospective accounts on getting into it. And so I was going up there for 3 days of training. And so I flew up on Sunday. Well, when you have cataract surgery, the one thing they tell you not to do is to lean forward because blood can rush to the eye. And of course, I leaned forward to the point where I went out to dinner with the guy who was going to train me, a friend of mine, Billy, and came back from dinner, went up to my room, had to take care of something, bent down, and I was in the bathroom. When I got up, it kind of felt weird. Took a look in the mirror and it scared the hell out of me. I thought my eyeball was falling out of my head, for real. Blood shot, I mean, blood protruding. It wasn't streaming, but the blood vessel had just engorged itself and couldn't even close my eyes. So went down. Unfortunately, I had a patch cover because I'm supposed to use that at night for the first week after having surgery. So I had that with me to put it over my eye because otherwise no one would have come near me. They wouldn't have wanted to come. I don't blame them. I looked in the mirror, scared the hell out of myself. And so I went down saying, hey, I need an emergency room. Where can I go? Finally, that friend of mine, Billy, got the message that I sent him. So he came down, went to the emergency room, and they said, well, you popped a blood vessel. A couple of hours in the emergency room, checked it out, went to see an ophthalmologist the next day. Vision is perfect. It just looked horrible. And so this is now, since a week ago Sunday. And so initially it was just the eye, but a little bit of black and blue, and then the black and blue just kind of really came up. So everything is good as far as visual. The interesting thing when you have cataracts, when they were finished, I had 20/20 vision, which I haven't had in, I can't even think of how many years it's been since I didn't need glasses. So I don't
It's
need
amazing.
glasses to drive. I do need them for reading though. But getting better. Just that little part right there. Of course, I have a seminar to do this Saturday in Nashville. So I was going to be wearing mirrored sunglasses to do it, but I don't think I'm going to need them anymore. But it was pretty scary. But it's kind of interesting. Of course, I get up to M&R. I'm up there Sunday night. I'm supposed to go and meet with the CEO, who's an old friend, on Monday. And it turns out he's having cataract surgery on Tuesday. So the first thing he sees is me with the patch over my eye. I must have scared the hell out of him, thinking, really, this is the result? Um, he ran into
Wow.
a minor complication with his as well, but nothing like mine. But yeah, I mean, if I were him, I would have certainly reconsidered if I want that surgery right now or not. But he did go ahead with that. Anyway,
Wow. So,
the joy of growing older and being on blood thinners.
mm.
Yeah.
Anyway,
To the first part of that story that you told, the reason you were there being about DTF,
yes.
how did your recent experience there uh, lead to any new insights on how you feel about DTF?
Yeah, I mean, so the interesting thing is the guy who was going to do the training for me is an old friend of mine, Billy, who's been at this industry for 40 years. Matter of fact, when he first got in, he worked for a company called Precision Screen Machines, and he would pour my ink for me. He has obviously moved up over the years. And then Danny Sweem, who is the CEO of M&R now, when I worked heavily with him when he was vice president of Rutland Inc. back in the 90s. And so all three of us are ex-screen printers. And so the whole idea of DTF is obviously something that was not our favorite topic, shall we say. But at the same time, being realistic, we looked at it, and all three of us are looking at it saying, it's not going to go away. It's definitely a viable situation. There comes that point where screen print and DTF clash a bit, but really DTF handles an area that doesn't really affect screen print directly very much. It does affect DTG a lot. That's what it's pretty much killed. Um, you know, there are things about screen printing that are never going to go away and never be replaced, at least not in my lifetime, which is high density work or special effects and stuff. They can do some funny things with some of the film that has sparkle to it and whatever, but you really can't do the type of things that you can do with a screen print. That being said, going through it and saying, okay, I need to have 12 shirts, full color. Which way am I going to go? And you're certainly not going to shoot up a series of screens to do 12 shirts because you can't make money at it. Uh, I don't care who you are. I don't care what you do. Just the cost of the emulsion, et cetera, and time just doesn't justify it. Um, that being said, certainly DTF does have its place, and I've never been against it as far as, do I like it or not? I mean, I'm still a screen printer at heart, no matter which way. But at the same time, I'm also a realist, and you do have to make money if you're going to be in an industry. And setting up to do a handful of shirts is very difficult in terms of financials. Um, so to me, the DTF is certainly a way of approaching it. I guess the biggest things that we went through was the size of and the cost of their unit versus some of the others, where theirs is really a heavy duty industrial system, 24-inch wide film versus some of the others on the market at 12-inch film speed. I guess the biggest thing that I saw when I was there, they have two different units. One is what they call a 4.4, where it has CMYK twice and white ink twice. And then they have a 6.8, which has CMYK white ink, but also has orange, green, I guess purple, and I forget the fourth color, but in essence, it's an expanded gamut. And so what they're able to hold in the way of Pantone or close to Pantone colors is that much greater than what you can ever get off CMYK. Um, and then we were talking about cost. Do you guys have you ever ordered any DTF stuff?
Yeah, so it's a timely discussion because it's something that as we are working with more and more businesses, we get a fair amount of demand for small quantity jobs on mixed variety of garments. And, if somebody wants women's racerbacks, sweatshirts, and tote bags, it's really in small quantities. It really makes it easy just to order transfers and he press them in, kind of
Right.
satisfy the customer. And I think in a lot of ways, a lot of these customers are okay with the quality and the hand feel of the DTF. So it's been something we've trying to keep our pulse on. We were looking at one of these Hotronics heat presses that has a projector system just to make placement a bit more automated
Yeah.
and kind of increase some of our time. But I think, yeah, one of the there it seems as a small shop that the line that gets drawn between screen printing and DTF is has to do with the material. Well, one, the speed of pressing is so much slower than we can print on the automated press, obviously.
Right.
And then the actual material cost of the transfer itself is substantial for large back prints. Like if we were to do like a 12-inch by 17-inch print, that transfer cost is going to be like the entire margin you know what I mean? It's a big expense. And in that case, it does make screen printing like so. It's something I want to keep my finger on the pulse of because it's obviously a technology the industry seems very interested in trying to, and it makes a lot of sense that you can digitally print and then apply with heat. But personally, I don't love the way it feels on a t-shirt. I think it makes more sense on sweatshirts and thicker garments. But yeah.
So, what on a 12-inch by 17-inch print, what was your cost on something like that?
I was just going on stalls and that I've been using the Ultra Color Max from them. And I can tell you right now, just
Yeah, I'm just curious because I know pretty much what it costs to have it done using the M&R Quattro system.
okay. So if I wanted to do, it's not that expensive, but it just kind of, so like a 13-inch by 6-inch is like $5. Um, a 16 by this is kind of a weird piece of art, but like a 16-inch wide by 8-inch tall is like 750.
Okay.
Um, and but I mean, it's not bad. It's just if you were to do 100 of those, I'd way rather screen print them. But
Oh, no doubt about it. There's definitely a cutoff point.
but it,
Um,
it does let you say yes to a lot more jobs that in the past I think we would have been like, no, we're not interested in doing that. So
yeah, I think, when you start dealing with smaller quantities and stuff, certainly the fact that you can send out, get it back inside of, within a week and be able to apply it and take your markup and move on from there. Um, it's certainly something worth looking into somewhere down the road. Uh, Again, there's quite a bit of difference between machines on the market, and it's kind of similar to what happened when DTG first hit in 2004. Um, the two machines that were at the show in 2004, you had Scott Fresner with his roughly $12,000 system, and then you had Kornit with their 90,000 single head and 130,000 twin head. Um, Not long after that, you had a slew of other machines on the market, and inside of probably 5, 6 years, probably three-quarters of those machines were gone. They were just not reliable. And of course, it was the early days, and white ink was definitely a factor, drying out. The amount of money that you lost every time you had to purge the white was incredibly expensive. Kornit obviously is still around, uh, making machines. What was interesting, I put together the distributors for them, and each distributor had to sell a minimum of 5 machines in the first year to retain their distributorship. Every one of them sold more than 5, and none of them sold a single head unit. They all sold the twins at 130 grand a piece, which was quite interesting. But I think even with DTF, you're going to find number one, almost everything comes out of China. So right now, everybody is kind of sitting back to see what happens with the tariffs, because you stick 145% on something like that, and it definitely becomes a issue. But I think what you're going to find, like when you guys were at the show, I don't know how much time you spent on the floor, but you had to see a ton of DTF equipment. And I would tell you probably in the next 3 to 5 years, 2/3 of those are going to be gone. You know, the better ones will certainly rise to the top. The others will just fade away. And it, it's certain, you know, I mean, I'm a bad person to talk to because I'm one of those guys who wants to be the first on his block to own anything. So, you know, would I have already owned a machine? Probably so. Then again, for what you do, the fact that you can just contract it off right now, not a bad thing.
I think it's great because it allows us to experiment. Like I'm assuming that over the next couple of years, Stalls is going to continue to improve their formula and the chemistry of their inks and maybe their machinery and whatnot, or another company will. And I think I'm going to guess that it's probably just going to be a matter of time until they get their films to feel, really smooth. Like one of the dilemmas that I see now is like, especially on small, finely detailed things, sometimes that detail doesn't come through, and sometimes there's a bit of like a halo kind of from the transfer powder or whatever, their adhesive they're kind
Yeah,
of
that's something that shouldn't happen.
mm,
So somebody is not doing something right. You should not have that halo.
mm. So yeah, I need to try other suppliers too, try to experiment with what's the best price to quality that we can get.
Yeah, one of the things I did learn was the quality of the rip that's doing the ripping of the artwork has a lot to do with how soft the hand is going to be.
Mm,
And so, you know, anytime you're going on a black shirt, if you eliminate the black ink, you're going to have that much softer a design, only because the black is eliminated. You're now feeling t-shirt, it becomes softer, etc. Um, and the quality of the rip is definitely where a lot of the companies are going to be separated one from the other. So it's not just uh, the hardware, it's actually the software that's going to be a major factor.
very interesting.
So yeah, and the particular rip that I know M&R is using was kind of interesting. It's kind of like, well, can you guys do this? Yep, we can do that. How about can you do this? Yep, we can do that. Okay, why don't you do it? Well, before we do, we need to let you know what the difference in price on that rip is going to be. And it came to the point where cost of the rip was going to be so astronomical that just couldn't afford to do it. And that's where companies like Stalls and some of the others are probably looking into things also in order to enhance their finished product, um, is to get the rip to do the things that they wanted to without the price going too crazy. You know,
Mm,
it's kind of like saying, okay, I can do this artwork and, you know, I can do it in Photoshop because I already own Photoshop, but it's going to take me 5 hours. But hey, if I take, you know, Separation Studio, I can do it in half an hour. But now I have to buy Separation Studio. Well, can Separation Studio also add these other elements to it? Yeah, but now that quote unquote $200 annual program is now going to become a $500 annual program. And that's kind of where M&R is with theirs is the cost of that rip and the cost of the use of it. It just keeps going up with every new thing that you want put in there. And of course, down the road, what will happen is in order to be competitive, there will be more and more things added. But I think they have to recover some of their investment. But right now, I think everybody is just sitting on everything, waiting for China to determine how they're going to handle the US and vice versa.
sure.
I mean, I know pretty much every piece of equipment is coming out of China as well as the ink. And so um, it's sit back and keep your fingers crossed because otherwise it could get pretty crazy. But there is definitely a cutoff point between, yeah, we're doing this with a screen print and, my cost on the screen print is going to be 10 cents a print versus doing it as a DTF where my cost is going to be, $2.50 out of my pocket because of the size of the print. And, you know, to do 10 of those at 250, I can do that. To do 100 of those at 250, that starts to become a problem.
And as a clothing brand, I just really don't like it. I feel like it feels fine when you have thin text that has a lot of shirt spacing and like negative space in between
Mhm.
it. Then you don't really notice the transfer, but any like larger surface areas that have a lot of coverage, like especially if you're comparing it on like a light color garment where maybe you're
Yep,
able to not put down an underbase and you're not really bridging the fibers in the shirt too much with plastisol anyway, then the comparability of feel on your back is, I mean, anybody who's watching this would know that it feels,
no question
not
about
quite
it.
the same as a soft hand plastisol feel.
I agree. Listen, you're never going to have to convince me that screen printing is a better route to go. I'm totally into that. But at the
But we'll
same,
see in the future.
well, look, when I first started printing, nobody worried about how the print felt. As long as it was vibrant, it was going to sell. Uh, Over the years, that obviously has changed to the point where they want it vibrant, but they want it soft. It needs to be, uh, needs to have great clarity, etc. Uh, DTF is certainly going to continue to get softer. Will it become as soft as a screen print? Doubtful. You're still dealing with the transfer.
Mm.
Will DTG continue? It will because it definitely has a market as well because it has a better hand. And so somebody who owns a DTG machine and a DTF machine kind of has the ability to go whichever way is most suitable based on what the client's demands are. Um, I think the biggest thing, and especially with companies that have everything, is they can make the decision. Yeah, we can do a screen print, we can do a DTG, we can do a DTF. And my guys in Pennsylvania from Axelrad do have all of those things. And so and their biggest business is rock and roll concerts. And yet, I was there once and they were using the DTG machine to do the shirts for a concert, which I thought was totally insane. But hey, if the client is willing to pay enough, then that's what you do. But I should really hook you guys up with them somewhere down the road because
You know,
they do have the Quattro from M&R, but they have the 4.4, which is not a full gamut. But they definitely are looking to do contract work off of their DTF machine.
hmm, very interesting. Yeah, he had reached out to us after we met in AC and sent us a really nice email and just said, "Hey, I'm here if you ever need anything," kind of thing. So certainly in the future we'll have to look into that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to hook you up. And their artist, Tyler, quite good at what he does, um, which is definitely a positive thing. So, the fact that you might have a piece of artwork. Part of the whole thing with artwork is also reworking it so that it is most compatible for DTF. Um, just taking it as is, it may not work. And of course, nobody is able to do proper halftone work yet, just
Mm.
because the adhesive can't jump onto the dot unless you want to have a 30, 35 line halftone, which if the design is okay for that, it's fine. But, once you get into things that are a little bit more detailed, that falls apart right now. And no doubt they're going to continue to try and do some things. I mean, when DTF first came out, they were trying to do it with a liquid adhesive instead of a powder, which of course could hold better detail. Problem was that the liquid adhesive was totally unstable to the point where it just screwed up machines. And so that was eliminated. But I wouldn't doubt that somewhere down the road, they're going to keep pushing back onto that till they finally work something out. But who knows?
One thing
I don't
that,
get,
oh,
huh?
sorry. No, I
No,
was
go
going to
ahead.
say, I have another completely tangential question for you, but on the topic of
Sure.
DTF, we were actually going to print DTF some athletic poly garments this morning. And when we did a few transfer experiments onto them, no matter kind of the pressure, time, and kind of temp settings that were around the stalls, like parameters that are given to us, for that kind of transfer, we were getting press marks on the polyester garment that we just wouldn't starch out and wouldn't really wash out. So we decided we're just going to screen print the job because it was only like two colors anyway. So we are
Okay.
going to screen print a 10-piece job. Um, you know, but we originally bought the transfers to do it, but the scorch marks on the polyester it was too difficult. And I don't want to heat transfer it at 250 degrees when it's a 290. So I'm not really
Well,
sure how to work around that.
I know. So I was told if you want the softest print, you go on a poly garment using DTF. And I think M&R has theirs worked out at about 250 degrees.
Um,
Will that affect the poly? You might still have an effect, I guess. I think the M&R transfer was taking, I want to say about 5 to 7 seconds, and it's an
okay.
immediate peel. Okay, there's no cooling. As you pop it, you immediately peel it. As a matter of fact, they had a machine there that I think they're first going to show, maybe in Texas or at Printing United, which was a carousel that um, had an automatic feed and automatic takeoff of DTF. So it took the DTF transfer, put it in place. It then hit with a transfer machine for like 3 or 4 seconds. Then it moved on, hit it with another transfer machine for 3 or 4 seconds, moved on, peeled it, and then went on to another transfer machine that again hit it, and then it came off. So it
Well,
was kind of well, not kind of, it was a carousel with three transfer heads on it. And they said, when you go on poly, you will get the softest print because polyester itself is really fairly soft and slick. Um, Stalls is asking for how much time and how much pressure?
so their Ultra Color Max is spec'd for 100% polyester and 100% cottons. It's a 12 to 15 second press time, medium pressure, and 290 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah, that's not so hot, only because um, polyester opens up, depending again on whose garment you're using, it can open up at 275. And so, could you get sublimating? I don't know enough about the DTF inks to know if they sublimate or not, but boy, that sounds pretty excessive. I can look into it for you and find out what my guys at Axelrad are doing.
Yeah, it's
And
interesting. I was gonna make, I know they do make the Ultra Color Max with a dye blocker option, but it's only sold by the Stalls Express, which I guess is the sister company to Stalls. I'm not really sure I understand the division in
yeah,
the.
well, Stolls owns a ton of companies like Dame, the artist that I work with,
Yeah.
is owned by Stolls. They
Mm.
bought him out, I think, about 11 years ago. So it used to be Great Dane Graphics. They finally eventually just closed that down. He's still with Stolls, but Stolls has expanded tremendously over the years.
Mm.
And, they're all over the world actually. But to me, I'm too much of a novice to really be able to nail it down, but I know that uh, 290 sounds pretty damn high. And 15 seconds definitely doesn't sound good to me. That's just a huge amount of time to have transfer head down. So I don't know. Whose transfer machine are you using? Stalls or
No, we're just using like a Heat Press Nation. It's like a 16 by 20,
okay.
and it was like maybe $800. It was a kind of a, mid single
Yeah.
head
Yeah,
situation.
because I know the stalls you're looking at about 2,500 on their swing away head, which is the one that I like. But Yeah, I don't know how controlled yours is in terms of actual temperature.
Yeah, it's a great question.
You know, just because it says that it's X amount doesn't mean that the whole platen is that particular temperature range.
Sure.
But
Mm.
who knows? Uh, I still think Stalls makes probably as good a transfer machine on the market as there is, with a couple of others coming right behind it, Hicks, and also what's the name out of Massachusetts? I should know them because I rep them. In any event, um, whatever. Hicks does make a pretty nice machine, but you want to get your laser on there, huh?
Yeah, the dual Hotronics IQ press that they make, where it's a
Yep,
dual head,
yep,
pneumatic driven with the projector system, it seems really cool because you can just kind of load your shirt right to the edge of the platen, and then the rest is controlled on the computer. So you can set the placement, and your employees can just line the transfer up with the projector and kind of press
right.
away.
Yep.
I liked the concept of that a lot.
No, it's a great, it's well thought out. And certainly it does speed up the whole process when you know exactly where to lay your machine, your transfer. It makes it an easier deal.
Yeah, because that's one of the challenges, really, is like, I know when we're on the auto press, like I know it's going to come out straight because
Yeah,
all I have to do is line the shirt straight. But placing the transfer and getting that to be perfectly straight every time, you got to set up. We do use a laser right now. We have it mounted above our press, and we use a T-square to kind of get it nice and square. But it's just a pain it's just a pain.
yeah, it
And
takes time.
yeah, so.
So you had some other questions for me.
Yes, one is on ink mixers. I was just interested in general, like we spend obviously a fair amount of time mixing ink, and it would be really nice to be able to have one mixing while you're weighing out um, other mixing inks, just to be
Okay.
able to do things at once. So all the units kind of seem fairly expensive, but I was wondering if you had an opinion of ink mixers and
Yeah, here's my opinion. You're going to laugh at it.
sure.
Go out and buy the heavy duty KitchenAid
Okay.
with the metal, metal base.
Yeah.
That, I mean, how much ink are you mixing at any one time?
No, we're mixing quartz.
Exactly. Dump it in there, mix. You would probably use the dough hook, which
Hmm.
is, just that funny, wiggle shape. And it's made of ceramic. When you're done, cleans easily. You scoop out the content of your bowl, easy to clean because it's stainless steel, and you're done.
So I actually bought a Ryobi drill press trying to kind of make the same thing with a vice grip on the drill press. And, it definitely works, but the problem is
Oh
like
yeah.
the the you have to hold it and move the ink container around because if you don't, you're just gonna like pilot hole right through the ink and it's not really gonna mix.
Well, that's why with the dough hook, it mixes all over the place.
Mm.
Neither of you are married, right?
No, but I actually have
So,
a
so you're
small.
not familiar with what a dough hook will do. There you go. Got Richard Greaves, who now wants to come in. Came just in time to leave. In any event, um, I would tell you, it's like a 400. The heavy duty one, I think, is like 400 and some odd dollars. Um, I don't think you can go wrong with it, to be honest with you. Especially if you're mixing quartz and stuff. I don't think you'd run into an issue at all.
Okay, cool.
What else can you no other questions? I mean, look, the units that are on the market are very nice. Um, they're slow. You never want to go fast because then you'll create heat and it'll of course cure the ink in the bucket. So it's a slower setting, but it works just fine.
Hmm.
Richard,
I
how are you?
Very good. Visiting my grandson in Alaska for 2 weeks.
Oh, good for you. Doing any fishing while you're up there?
No.
Come on, man. I mean, you go to I'm the only guy I know that's gone to Alaska twice and has yet to get a nibble.
Ah,
Well, good for you. Hope you're enjoying it up there. Drove me crazy the first time I went. I never understood why somebody needed a 24-hour watch until I got up there and I woke up and it was 6 and it was like, is it 6 a.m. or 6 p.m.? I can't tell the difference because it looked exactly the same. So, definitely made my day when I realized that a 24-hour watch will at least keep me out of trouble. So I know if I'm supposed to be sleeping or not.
Wow.
Oh, well. Aiden, any other questions or anything that I can help out with? Richard, we got you at the end. You're in the wrong time zone.
all right, sorry. I thought it was on time. I
You,
apologize.
you actually came at the end. You need to go back to Michigan in order to be on time.
Okay.
Nothing else for you guys?
You know what? This is kind of a silly question, but if we're fishing for them, we're doing a job where we're essentially printing like the Mets colors. So it's like that bright orange on a
That
royal
blue.
blue. And Alex and I were just kind of debating this. It's like it's for a 5K race, and there's a bunch of sponsors on the back, and you have some really fine cursive text on the back. And we were thinking, like, okay, is this a situation where you would just do 2 orange prints, or would you want it to stand on white? And if you do, and you kind of start choking the white just to kind of make the registration easier, there's going to be areas that are so thin that are going to have very little laydown on the underbase screen.
So
Just kind of,
what color shirt are you going on?
they're 100% cotton, like royal blue.
Royal blue. So you do need an underlay then. The way you can get around it. So how many colors is the actual print? Just one?
It's just solid Mets orange.
Okay. So if it were me, I would probably go to Union Ink, see if their orange comes close to it, and do a print flash print of their max opaque orange.
Hmm.
And then you don't need an underbase.
Yeah, it's only like 200 shirts, so we were thinking maybe of doing something similar. You'd kind of get it done pretty quickly anyway doing that, but
Yeah, I mean, the moment you have white on the underbase, um, especially with something fine and you have to choke it, that becomes an issue. If you have um, orange hitting to orange, and it's just a matter of registering it properly. You should be, especially with something like Max Opaque Orange, which is really, really opaque. You could probably modify it enough to get it to look like the Mets orange. I would go that way.
okay. Just print flash print orange on orange.
Yeah, depending on the fineness of detail, the lower the mesh count is, and especially if you're going to do 2 screens, I'd probably do a finer screen on the bottom and then the heavier one on top, just so that you have a little bit more oomph to it. So the bottom seals off the shirt and the top one gets it to bang up.
Interesting. So you'd actually go with the fine. Am I hearing you right that you would go with the finer mesh as your kind of pseudo underlay?
Yeah, because then you're sealing off the shirt. And so then the second orange is going to sit on top of the first. What's your thoughts, Richard?
I was thinking exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
That you'd want a more liquid version of the orange ink so that it would also flash faster.
Yep. So yeah, that's definitely the way I would go, is finer on the bottom and then the heavier on top and then through the dryer.
Another idea would be to print the exact same color as the shirt.
Hmm.
And get it, yeah.
So you'd do this color on color, and that way, if you're a wee bit out of registration, a blue might flash faster than an orange.
Yeah, although for 200 shirts, honestly, I'm still an orange guy, just because if you are off by a hair, you couldn't tell.
And the idea, I'm just shifting it in that the
I
color of the
understand.
shirt you wouldn't see.
Listen, there's more than one way to skin a cat, without a doubt. So But yeah, that's the way I would go.
Richard, following up on what you were saying about a thinner liquid or ink on the first screen, what do you mean by that? Are you reducing it to do that, or are you just?
Well, what you want is not necessarily color. For instance, in the olden days, we used to use clear to flash
Yeah.
until Joe Clark at Wilflex invented first down clear. And so that's another version. I don't know if Wilflex makes that anymore, but I'm sure that they do. But a clear ink will always also match. So you add a little color to it, but it's the film underneath, just like you would gesso a canvas or do a primer on a drywall. You need to seal the shirt so it's not absorbing your orange, and the orange doesn't go into the shirt. So the seal is important to flash. I've often printed black ink down first on a black shirt, and that seals the shirt and flashes in a nanosecond. And then whatever you print on top of it, perfect. I first used that when I was doing a star design with lots of little tiny stars. Could never get the white dots to hit the white dots.
Interesting.
Of course, if you notice, the reason you couldn't get him to hit is because he wears glasses. So,
Well,
you know,
all right-thinking people wear
it's like,
glasses. I don't know if you know.
I don't know. Through my glasses, it looks pretty good. I think I'll live with it. In any event,
It was for the Smithsonian. I didn't want to screw up.
no, I don't blame you. In any event, guys, thanks so much for being on today. I really do appreciate it. Richard, thanks for showing up, even if it's at the bitter end. I hope you're enjoying Alaska.
I am. I'm sorry I'm late. I will not make that mistake again.
Not a problem. I need to figure out who I'm going to get on next, but we'll figure something out. In any event, guys, anything that comes up that I can help with, just give me a buzz.
Thank you so much.
Sounds great. Thank you.
You guys have a great one.
You too.
Thanks, you too.
Richard, thanks again.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.